how many years did it take until you felt like, oh, I'm actually making decent money and I figured out my lane or lanes that work for me? How many years was that?
Well, it wasn't years. It was months,
Really?
probably. Yeah. I didn't make, well, because I made no money for, 8 years or something. I didn't get paid. I improv troops, acting classes, groundlings, open mics, anything that anybody said sounded cool. Like if you just went, hey man, let's go sit at the diner and write sketches till 4 a.m, just drinking free coffee refills on
Like,
a
I'm
Tuesday
in.
night. I'd be like, I'll bring my notebook, and what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So all I did was just for free. I never made a penny. I mean, like occasionally be some weird thing where like some guy would get a gig. Like, we're going to get in cowboy outfits and we're going to the Gene Autry Museum and they need us to do a funny little thing, and I'll pay $100, and I go like, yeah, okay, let's do it, But I mean, I taught comedy. Traffic school was a thing back in the day. Got paid, but I was a traffic school teacher. But in my mind, I was in front of an audience, even though there were just people that were cited for speeding.
Right.
And it was air conditioned,
Getting paid.
and I wasn't covered with stucco dust, at the end of the day. So, but no, I didn't make any money.
So you were doing stuff you liked, that you enjoyed, that you were finding a talent and good at, but you weren't making money until how many years until you're making?
Well, then when I was coming up on my 30th birthday was the problem.
And that was the timeline for you. It was like, okay, I got 8 years.
I could have started at 21. I could have started at 22. I mean, I remember the apartment I was in. I was in my first apartment, so it was pretty early. But I was just like, look, you got until you're 30. Because 30 sounded old enough to like, okay, no more sharing futons and,
Right.
drinking Schaefer beer in the park, like
ramen noodles,
Yeah, ramen noodles and, generic Captain Crunch and
not even the real Captain Crunch.
no, everything was
the
generic.
half off Captain Crunch.
Yeah. So I was like, by the time you're 30, you got to be
Doing something.
And
So what did you decide to do?
well, I was a little earlier on, probably about a year, maybe a year and a half earlier. I always liked boxing, and I was like, they were opening these gyms or like white collar boxing or whatever, like you teach lawyers and doctors how to box. That could be fun because I like it. I was so tired of construction that I couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, I want to be around people and smart people and people that have money and people that drive something out of a truck and everything. And I kind of made my way into a boxing gym. It's called Bodies in Motion. It used to be right up down Pico or something, not far.
Is this like late 90s now or?
No, this is still early. This is like 90.
Wow.
91 maybe, whatever. I went into there and I talked to the guy and I'm like, hey man, I could really be a good boxing coach. And he's like,
Get out.
get out of here. And he just told me to buzz off, and I was like, why don't you give me a shot, And he's like, we just hire ex-champions and champions. And
Pros, yeah.
We hire real people, because they got to have credentials, because this guy's a WBA, welterweight.
Right.
You idiot walked off a construction site. Those aren't credentials.
This is a bronze medalist in the Olympics. This is a...
And if they fluff them up a little, But, so he just went, no, and I remember I was looking at the club, at the fitness place, and I saw like speed bag stations with the bag and I saw like a couple of them, like they were sitting on the floor, like against the wall, and he was like shooing me out of the place, and I was like, hey, those speed bags, you need those hung? And all of a sudden he was like, yeah. I'm like, well, I'm a carpenter. And he's like, oh, you are? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, because I got some heavy bags that need to be hung too. And I'm like, well, I know how to do that. And he's like, oh, so let's talk. And I said, okay, you give me $10 an hour, just flat out. And I mean, back then, carpenters probably making $15-16 an hour or something. I was going, just give me $10 an hour. What time's the gym close? Like 10 at night or whatever. I said, what time's it open? 6 in the morning. I was like, I'll be here 10 at night, 6 in the morning. I'll show up at night. I'll hang all this stuff. Just give me the keys. And you let me try teaching boxing.
Wow.
And the guy's like, yeah, okay, sure. So I taught a little bit, and then he wanted to open a place in Old Town Pasadena. There was another place, but he needed it like renovate or whatever. And he was like, you build that place for $10 an hour and you can teach there. And I was like, I'll do it.
Holy cow.
And so I built it. And so I taught there, but I would make $20 a class. So, and I was only teaching like 5 classes a week or something, but it's like in my world, I was doing something different. And I was kind of enjoying myself. It was fun to leave the class and put your mixtape on and all that stuff. And so I was like, all right, well, this feels better than, being on a construction site. But I was still building cabinets and working for myself because I couldn't cut it on $100 a week, So I'd teach my morning boxing and then
Go to the job. Yeah.
I'd go build cabinets for somebody or something like that. And then I was driving over the hill, driving over Laurel Canyon, going up the hill. And I was just listening to Kevin and Bean on K-Rock, and they were talking about Jimmy the sports guy and Michael the maintenance man, and Jimmy said something offensive, and they got into an argument, and they're going to have a boxing match. And they're like, we need trainers, and I was like, oh my God, I don't think it's like I could see the radio station. What is this like, this radio station? I listen to it every day. I don't know where it is. And what's it like, And as I got to the customer's house and I was like, can I use your phone? And she was nice. And she's like, yeah. And I was calling the radio station and I just get Frank Murphy, the producer, I just get his answering machine. I'm like, I'm a boxing coach and I want to train someone, and here's my home number, or leave a message or whatever. And they never called back. And some days were going by and I'd be listening, like, we need a boxing coach. And
like,
guys were like calling in on air and stuff, and I couldn't get anything going. So they wouldn't return calls. They wouldn't do anything. So I found out where the radio station was before my 7 a.m. boxing class, or maybe it was like a 6 a.m. boxing class. I can't remember. It was early, like 6:30, 7. And I went down there. I got into the building. It was like a commercial building, and then just went up to the 9th floor, but the suite was locked where the radio station was. And I knew they were in there somewhere, but they're not the receptionists, And then do, business hours, 9 to 5, like if you win tickets to YouTube,
right, you go pick them up.
You got to pick them up, and you can't show up at 7. No one's there. And they're there, but the receptionist isn't there, So I was like, odd. Now I showed up at 5:30 in the morning one day and I couldn't get into the building. That's what happened. Then I showed up the next day at like 6:30 or 7. I did get into the building, but I couldn't get into K-Rock. And then I was just standing on the 9th floor by the elevators, and I knew that was the K-Rock like suite, but no one's going to answer. And I was just like standing by the elevators, like, what do I do? Do I come back? Like, maybe I'll come back in 2 hours and someone will be there. But then what if I get into the suite? I like, is the receptionist going to go get the morning show guys? Right. I don't think that's what they do. Like, they're going to just go leave a number, and I'm just going to leave. And right as I'm sort of going over the machinations in my head of like, how could I work this out? Some guy just comes out of the elevator And he starts like making a line for the back of K-Rock with the key card door, like the staff door. And I'm like kind of walking with him, and he's going in, and I go, are you going into K-Rock? And he's like, yeah. And I don't know to this day. I don't know if he's the vending machine repair guy or he's a phone screener or like whatever he is. He's just going in. And I go, hey, if you're going in there, just tell him there's a boxing coach, and I'll just be by the elevators. I'll just be hanging here. So just tell him someone's here. And I think the guy kind of just put his hand up or something. Like, we didn't talk about it. He was like doing something, He just kind of went, yeah. And one door shut, So I just went and stood by the elevators. And I was probably out there about 10 or 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And then at some point, some guy just came down the hall. It's a young guy. He's like, you the boxing coach? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, okay. You want to teach me to box? I said, yeah. I said, who are you? What's your name? It's like, oh, my name's Jimmy the sports guy. I said, okay. Well, Jimmy the sports guy is going to fight Michael the maintenance man. I guess I just got Jimmy the sports guy. So I'll train you to box. And I said, when do you want to start? He said, how about today? And I was like, yeah, I'm at Bodies in Motion in Pasadena, like Old Town Pasadena. I'll meet you by the parking structure like at noon. He said, all right, I'll see you at noon. Okay. And then that guy turned out to be Jimmy Kimmel.
Wow.
And I was pretty lucky that it wasn't Michael the maintenance man who came out, but Jimmy did.
So Jimmy shows up that day and you start boxing.
Yeah. And I'm going to be turning 30 in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm like, I've got to
figure
out something with this guy,
So what happened how long were you, training Jimmy Kimmel for this match? And then what evolved from that opportunity?
Probably had about 3 weeks, probably.
A few sessions a week or?
Well, Jimmy was my meal ticket, my life preserver. Like, I'm like, I got to hang on to this guy with both hands. He's a dude, he's in radio.
He's on radio.
He's on the radio.
He's making money.
Now he's making $49,000 a year or $44,000 a year. He's living in a rented house in Reseda and driving a RX-7 that's beat to,
But it's better than you.
But it's better than me, and he's in radio. And so I'm like, I got to figure out a way to get this guy to think I'm super funny. Now the fight's over, and this kind of the end of the prom for me, and I'm like, what could I do to like with the radio, like something with the morning show or something
to have like a segment or be a correspondent or do something.
Yeah. Like
I'll drive
the van. I'll do whatever.
Right.
I want to get in there. I wanted to get in there.
And what did he say?
He said, what do you do? And then I said, I make things funnier. Like I shoot the breeze. I'm back and forth. I'm on my feet. I'm an improv guy. Pow, pow, pow. I'd be in there making it funnier. And he just went, that's what Kevin and Bean do that. What do they need you? What do they need you for? You think you're going to sit like in between them and like make them funnier? That's their show, and they don't need you for that. So you got to come up with something other than that. And so he said, you got to come up with a character. And if you come up with a character and it works, and then it could be a reoccurring thing. And I'm like, I'm not really a character dude. I don't really do voices. I'm not that guy. Like, I'm just not a character guy. And he's like, well, it's better start. Figure it out. And I was like, all right.
That's your way in.
And he said, you can call in on Monday. I won't tell them who you are because they'll think you're the boxing coach. That's not going to work. So I'll just set it up. I'll tell them I got this thing's funny. Guy's going to call in. They're not going to know anything. And just call in Monday. And, they're a little moody. Like it's probably, I've been on the other end of this a lot where it's like someone goes, how you want to have that guy back? Or was it funny? And I'm like, didn't really land. It didn't really work. And, so I did it, Monday morning, whatever. And, I did a character and it kind of worked. Like it was like worked enough, and of course I called Jimmy like the second.
How'd it go?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. And he was like, they thought it was pretty, that was pretty good. It was okay. Like, could we try it next week? Can I try it again next week? Like, yeah, I think I can get them to whatever next week. And so I did it the next week and then the next week. And then it blew up and it just became this super popular bit. So I'm like, well, this sucks. And then I'm like, well, what else could I do? But, doctor, lawyer, white collar, I could fill out an application. I don't have any real education. I don't have any credentials. Like, where am I going to work? I can't even know how to make a tie. I don't have a suit.